They ranged from 79 to 4 months old.
They're the ones who didn't make it.
Oh my God, this is horrible. I know people live in that house.
Tonight, a neighborhood in Allentown bears the scar of a mighty explosion and fire.
It truly looks like a disaster.
A disaster both frightening.
My dad, my sister, all freaked out.
And fierce.
We have everybody from the city of Allentown here.
Hundreds had to leave home in a hurry.
Next thing I know, they were getting buses for us.
And some can never go home again.
Got to start from the beginning again.
But through it all, a city soldiers on.
Allentown, folks, is a very resilient city.
Team coverage next on 69 News at 5.
Your life, your world, your news. This is 69 News, live at 5.
And good evening once again, everyone. I'm Rob Vaughn.
And I'm Wendy Davis. 5 were missing. Tonight, all 5 are gone. Investigators say they've confirmed the deaths of everyone who was unaccounted for following last night's explosion and fire in Allentown. 4 of the victims' bodies have been found in the rubble near North 13th and West Allen Streets. Investigators say they're still looking for the body of the 5th person, but again, they do confirm that 5 people were killed in all. Cadaver dogs were on the scene earlier today, helping the recovery teams in their search. The victims, we're told, are a baby, a teenager, a 69-year-old woman, and an elderly couple. Friends say that couple, Bill and Beatrice Hall, had 2 grandchildren and liked to take bus trips to New England.
I'm very, very upset about it. You pray that your friends die of old age instead of something as violent as this.
Here is a look at where the explosion took place in relation to the rest of Allentown. Again, this happened just before 11 o'clock last night. North 13th and West Allen Streets, several blocks north of the Center City area. 8 homes were destroyed and more than 30 were damaged, along with several businesses. And hundreds of people were forced to evacuate. It's been about 18 hours now since the blast, and those 18 hours have been no doubt exhausting for everyone who's been affected by the tragedy in some way.
So right, and WFMZ's Joscelyn Moes continues our coverage for us tonight. She's joining us live from Gross Towers apartment complex, where officials just wrapped up a news conference a short time ago. Jocelyn.
That's right, Wendy and Rob. Investigators, as you mentioned, have confirmed 5 people are dead. They've recovered the bodies of 4 people, a 4-month-old male, a 16-year-old female, a 69-year-old female, and a 79-year-old male. We're told they're from 2 families. They lived in the 2 homes that were leveled by the explosion. Officials still search for a 5th person. Around 10:45 Wednesday night, an explosion rocked this Allentown neighborhood. It occurred at 544 North 13th Street. Neighbors tell us and property records confirm the home is owned by an elderly couple, William and Beatrice Hall.
I spoke to several of the families. I assured them that we as a city will use all our resources that we have available to us to get answers for these families and help them in any way that we can.
The blast sparked a massive fire, and crews worked throughout the night to get it under control.
It was a very difficult fire to fight because of the weather, because of the snow piles, the ice. As soon as we throw water, everything turned to ice.
Fire officials say 2 homes were leveled by the explosion and 6 homes were destroyed by the fire that followed. Officials say 47 properties were damaged, including 10 businesses. UGI crews worked for several hours to turn off the gas in the neighborhood.
It took several hours to entirely shut down the system, but we quickly controlled the area in and around the fire.
UGI says it hadn't been doing any work in the area. In fact, we're told crews conducted a routine leak survey within the past week and didn't find anything. About 350 people had to be evacuated from the surrounding city blocks and the Gross Towers senior apartment complex. Most were let back into their homes early this morning. About 70 are still displaced as officials continue to investigate. Now, autopsies have been conducted on the 4 people whose bodies were recovered today. Officials are not releasing any of the names of the victims. They expect to release some of the names tomorrow. As for a cause, it's still under investigation. Reporting live in Allentown, Joscelyn Moes, 69 News.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Because the devastation was so widespread, Allentown fire officials had to lock down an equally large perimeter to keep emergency responders and the general public safe.
Right, crime tape could be seen at every street, every alley, every intersection near the scene. Hundreds of people gathered at the barricades to get a glimpse of the devastation, including a couple who knew 2 of the victims, Bill and Beatrice Hall.
They were very nice people. Beatrice was always talking, very friendly. She always had good things to say about everybody. She sold Avon, and she was involved in Cub Scouts at our church.
In the early afternoon, some residents were allowed to go beyond the tape to get back into their homes. Now we'd like to take a look at an image from Google Street View.
It's a look at the homes affected by the explosion. Now, this is before it happened, of course. You can see the area in relation to nearby Gross Towers, which was evacuated last night. Now you can take a look at the blast area today. This video is taken by one of our 69 News photographers from the 7th floor of the buildings at Gross Towers. 69 News viewers from Bethlehem to Briningsville told us their homes were shaken by that blast. Well, meantime, firefighters who responded to the explosion had more than just flames to deal with. Freezing cold temperatures turned the water they sprayed into ice on the power lines, the streets, the sidewalks. And UGI crews had to break through a layer of ice before breaking through the street just to shut off that gas line that fueled that fire.
What a night it was. The frigid weather also made a massive evacuation effort even more complicated.
Hundreds of people were chased from their homes last night in that freezing cold, and many of them came from the nearby Gross Towers.
WFMZ's Bo Koltnow has more on that.
An evacuation of frigid proportions.
1:45 and it's cold is tough on the elderly.
Nearly 700 people, mostly made up of elderly residents at Gross Towers and Towers East, boarded 6 Atlanta buses late Wednesday night and early Thursday morning, bound for Allentown's Ag Hall. So what do you think about having to get on a bus and be taken all the way over here?
I think that's fine.
You were okay with it?
Sure, fine.
Walkers, wheelchairs, canes, and arms were all used to fight through the frigid cold. Volunteers appeared seemingly out of nowhere to lend a helping hand. 95-year-old Thelma Paulos' son came to her rescue. How were people's spirits on the bus?
They seemed fine. They were helping the people that were blind or that had walkers or everything. I never saw people that were so prepared.
A result of a late-night explosion that destroyed 8 homes and damaged at least 16 others near 14th and Allen.
I've been in earthquakes in California. It felt like an earthquake to me.
The next house wasn't even touched yet. And, like, the flames didn't even get to it yet. The whole house was gone. I was just in shock.
Antonio and Jill Arroyo are 2 who suddenly find themselves homeless as their house went up in flames.
What you see, what we have right here is what we have, and that's it. You know, everything else is gone.
But overall spirits inside were high. Laughter among the beleaguered bunch could be seen. Even animals were taken in. The Red Cross, volunteers, even a few city council members passed out food, water, and blankets. For many here, they've been through something like this before. 16 years ago, Gross Towers exploded. And last night, some say they thought the same thing had happened again. Chief of Police at Allentown's Fairgrounds, James Spang, says he remembers that explosion, but says this scene is bigger.
Actually running smoother because basically that was rehearsal for this. This is a bigger event.
At 4:20, more than 5 hours after arriving, the 186 Gross Tower residents who stayed returned home. For those now without one, like the Arroyos, the Red Cross is finding temporary housing. Bo Koltnow, 69 News.
The Red Cross indeed says it has helped 30 people who were displaced by the explosion and fire. Disaster victims can get Red Cross assistance by calling this number on the screen. But officials say victims should not contact them by email because you can get help faster by calling. Anyone who wants to provide food or hotel rooms may also call this Red Cross number on the screen. This information is also available at our website, WFMZ.com. Of course, Bo mentioned the Gross Towers blast. That happened more than 16 years ago. That's not the only major gas explosion in Allentown's past.
No, in August of 1976, 2 explosions on Oak Street left 2 city firefighters dead and another one hurt. The aforementioned Gross Towers blast in June of 1994 left 1 man dead, 80 people hurt in that one. And an excavation crew ruptured a gas pipe and caused the fire that caused the extensive damage there.
More than a dozen years later, in December 2006, an explosion and fire leveled 3 homes and damaged another in the 700 block of Mohawk Street. Nobody was hurt, amazingly enough, in that situation. Officials say a subcontractor hired by UGI removed the wrong fitting on a gas meter he was working on. That's what led to that Mohawk Street blast.
And you may recall in November of 2008, this explosion, a gas leak, caused this, leveled a house in the 1300 block of St. John Street. 2 brothers who were inside the home at the time of the blast managed to survive.
Stay with 69 News for continuing coverage of last night's explosion.
We'll have more coming up at 5:30 and then again at 6. And be sure to go to our website, WFMZ.com, for additional coverage. We have the raw video there, viewer photos, witness interviews, and much, much more.
All right, now a check on the roads.
And for that,
Live at 5:30.
It's a loss.
Well, 5 people are dead and 8 homes destroyed after an explosion and fire in Allentown. Fire officials are still searching for one of the fire victims and for answers as to exactly what caused that blast in the first place. WFMZ's Jaccii Farris has the story.
Like a disaster. It truly looks like a disaster.
Just after 10:45 last night, 13th and Allen Streets in Allentown erupt in fiery chaos. Fire officials don't know if the gas that allegedly caused the explosion and started the fire came from the street or was in a home.
It's very dangerous, especially we're fighting the fire while the gas is still leaking. So we're always cautious of the secondary explosion. What's going to happen? What's next?
Fighting the fire proved difficult. The gas had to be turned off and water used to fight the fire quickly turned to ice. Neighbors stood watching, wondering about the fate of the people who lived in the 8 devastated homes. Among those killed was a senior citizen and a 4-month-old baby. Neighbor Angel Rodriguez says he drove past his home and pulled into his driveway seconds before the explosion.
Before we even turned off our car, we felt and heard the explosion. I got out the car and looked down the street, and it just looked like fireworks had gone off. There was, fire going and sparks in the air. So I knew something bad had happened.
Mayor Ed Pulowski visited with the families of the 8 homes that were destroyed. He told them he would do his best to get answers to exactly what happened here and help them rebuild their lives. In Allentown, Jaccii Farris, 69 News, Berks Edition.
Thanks, Jaccii.
Officials with the Reading-based UGI say the cause of the explosion is still under investigation.
The majority of crews that responded to the explosion came from its Lehigh Valley office, but there are a couple dozen people based in Reading that are now in Allentown. WFMZ's Pam Cunningham is live in the Berks studio now with that part of the story for us. Pam.
Rob and Wendy, in the aftermath of this tragedy, UGI says it is cooperating with the government's investigation, and the spokesperson explained how the utility company responded to the explosion.
UGI says it got the call at 11 o'clock Wednesday night and had crews at the site of the explosion by 11:18.
You're under the assumption that it's a natural gas leak.
UGI says it takes safety seriously and routinely checks for leaks.
As of Tuesday, that area was clean. We received no gas leak calls. We received no gas odor calls.
But less than 24 hours of that inspection, an explosion occurred. And he says the utility doesn't know why, but it was treated like a potential gas explosion and sealed the pipe feeding the block.
We actually had to cut on both ends of the block, and then you have what's called foam seal, which is essentially injected into the pipe.
He says that happened at 3:45 a.m. But for several hours, flames were out of control because of the gas that continued to feed the fire.
There was no apparent leak in the line. Okay, and that's why we're assuming it's a natural gas leak. It appears to be a natural gas explosion. It may turn out not to be, but most likely it is.
But he says figuring out if it was a leak in a pipe, a service line, in the basement of a home, or something else won't happen right away.
We don't know what the cause of that explosion was. The investigation is going to take some time. Government agencies are going to come in. UGI is certainly going to cooperate with those government agencies.
Swope says there are Reading people from its pipeline safety group, claims group, and other senior executives who are in Allentown. Rob.
All right, Pam, thanks very much. We'll have much more on the explosion in Allentown coming up in the next half hour on the news at 6. And you can get lots of information online anytime at WFMZ.com.
Your life, your world, your news. This is 69 News live at 6.
Worst fears have been confirmed at the scene of a monster of an explosion in Allentown. 5 people were missing following the blast. Tonight, officials say all 5 are dead. Good evening once again. I'm Rob Vaughn.
And I'm Wendy Davis. The bodies of 4 people, including a 4-month-old baby and a teenager, have been recovered from the rubble.
but investigators are still searching for a fifth victim. The explosion, as you know, happened just before 11 last night at North 13th and West Allen Streets in Allentown. Damage was severe. 8 homes were destroyed. More than 30 others were damaged, along with several businesses. Hundreds of people were forced to flee from their homes. As for the victims, officials say they ranged in age from 4 months to 79 years. Their names have not yet been released officially, but a family member of William and Beatrice Hall says the couple is, in fact, among the dead. As for the fifth and final victim, cadaver dogs have been brought to the scene to assist the investigators.
We have live team coverage of this disaster tonight. WFMZ's Joscelyn Moes is at the Gross Towers on West Allen Street.
But let's start with Stephanie Esposito. She's at the scene of the explosion with more on the victims. Stephanie?
That's right. I am here at the scene of the explosion, but there's really not much to see because the 2 homes that used to be behind me are completely leveled. And authorities have confirmed tonight that 5 people inside those homes are dead. One of the bodies is still missing.
My son-in-law called me, about 7 o'clock this morning, and said, you know, your old neighborhood on 13th Street. I says, yeah. He said, it's gone.
David Sterner raised his family here on 13th Street in Allentown.
I moved in there in 1974, newly married, and we had a baby on the way. And yeah, they were one of the first ones to come over and say hello and welcome us to the neighborhood.
They are Bill and Beatrice Hall. They lived in their home around 50 years. Bill was retired from Chrysler, and Bea, as she was known to her friends, sold Avon. The couple was involved in their church and enjoyed taking bus trips to New England.
They were wonderful, very good Christians.
Bill and Bea's house, 544 North 13th Street, was completely leveled. The entire city block, which included 8 homes, was destroyed.
There goes Bea's house, there goes Ed's house, there goes Don's house. Oh no, there's my house, there's my other house, and there's Tony's house. They're all gone.
Somebody said look up there, and I wish I hadn't. I saw Bea. It was on fire.
Oh, I'm going to miss them terribly.
In addition to Bea and Bill, also confirmed dead are a 4-month-old baby boy, a 16-year-old girl, and a 69-year-old woman. Neighbors say that the teenage girl's father was working at the time of the explosion. Neighbors say they had only lived on the street for about a year.
We're going to be devastated because it's family. That's family.
The Lehigh County coroner has not yet confirmed the identity of the 5th victim. Live in Allentown, Stephanie Esposito, 69 News.
Thank you, Stephanie.
All right, let's check in with Joscelyn Moes now. She's at Gross Towers with the very latest on the investigation for us. Joscelyn.
Wendy and Rob, investigators are still searching for that 5th person as we speak. We're told the victims are from 2 families. They lived in the 2 homes that were leveled by the explosion. Around 10:45 Wednesday night, an explosion rocked this Allentown neighborhood. It sparked a massive fire and sent plumes of smoke and flames into the air. The big blast occurred at 544 North 13th Street. Friends and neighbors tell us 69-year-old Beatrice Hall and her husband, 79-year-old William Hall, lived there. Their home was leveled, as was the one next door. Neighbors tell us the Cruz family lived at 542 North 13th Street.
We're sifting through the debris in hopes of finding the victims.
5 people are confirmed dead. Officials have recovered the remains of 4 of the victims.
At this point, we are currently using specialized dogs to assist with the recovery of the remains.
Crews worked throughout the night to get the fire under control. Firefighters say another 6 homes were destroyed by the fire and 47 properties were damaged, including 10 businesses. UGI crews worked for several hours to turn off the gas in the neighborhood. UGI says it hadn't been doing any work in the area. In fact, we're told crews conducted a routine leak survey within the past week and didn't find anything.
Investigation will tell us a lot over the next few days. We have engineers on site, NTSB, PUC.
About 350 people had to be evacuated from the surrounding city blocks and the Gross Towers senior apartment complex. Most were let back into their homes early this morning. About 70 are still displaced as officials continue to investigate. And autopsies have been conducted on the 4 people whose bodies have been recovered. Officials are not releasing the names of the victims. They're expected to release some of the names tomorrow. As for a cause, it is still under investigation. Reporting live in Allentown, Joscelyn Moes, 69 News.
Thanks, Joscelyn. After the explosion last night, fire officials locked down the area.
As WFMZ's Jaccii Farris reports, if you weren't involved in the emergency effort, you probably weren't getting in.
If you want to get up to see close, you're out of luck.
The area around the West Allen Street gas explosion and fire was draped in crime tape. Every street, every alley, every way in was blocked. If you weren't fighting the fire, chances are you weren't getting in. People like Al Haybecker could be found at every blockade, people who wanted to see the thing that rattled their windows and woke them from their sleep.
Right now, I'm just walking around the perimeter just to see what I can see because of what I've heard and seen on television.
In the early afternoon, some residents were allowed to go beyond the tape to get back in their homes. Jamie Hodgen wanted to check on his parents.
There's a police officer everywhere. You know, everything's roped off. So I just had to give my mom a call. She had to come on the porch and kind of give the cop a wave. And then I guess they're making sure no one's looting the houses if nobody's there.
While some came to check on loved ones or because they were curious, one couple came to pay their respects. Barbara and Daliet Rep came to the blockade because they know victims Bill and Beatrice Hall.
They were very nice people. Beatrice was always talking, very friendly. She always had good things to say about everybody. She sold Avon, and she was involved in Cub Scouts at our church.
Fire officials say the barricades were necessary because of the scale of the incident and to make sure emergency crews were able to do their job without worrying about a curious public. In Allentown, Jaccii Farris, 69 News.
The explosion was certainly a close call for one couple who lived just down the street. Karen Grabowski called into our station during our extended live coverage last night. She and her husband lived just 3 houses away from where that blast happened, just 3 doors down from the source of that blast. She says she was in bed when she heard that big bang and then her ceiling caved in.
I just thought our ceiling fan had and I hear glass and I couldn't get up. You know, he finally just pushed everything off the bed and got me out.
Karen and her husband managed to make it downstairs. They escaped through a window. Her husband suffered some cuts to his face, but they're both okay.
In all, the blast drove nearly 700 people from their homes last night. Many of the evacuees were the elderly residents of the nearby Gross Towers. 6 Lanta buses were brought in to shuttle them to Ag Hall.
Were you scared?
No, I was. I went back to bed and slept for a while. Then all of a sudden the alarm went off, and then they knocked on the doors and said we had to get evacuated.
While the move was hard on a lot of residents, most were in high spirits. They were able to return to Gross Towers about 5 hours later. Of course, that explosion is reminiscent of another deadly disaster. Back in 1994, an excavation crew ruptured a gas pipe, and that sparked a massive fire at Gross Towers. The chief of the Allentown Fairgrounds Police responded to both emergencies. He says this time around crews were more prepared.
It's actually running smoother because basically that was rehearsal for this. This is a bigger event at this point.
1 man was killed and about 80 others injured in the Gross Towers incident in 1994.
The Red Cross is providing disaster assistance for anyone who needs it. People are urged to call 610-865-4400. Officials say caseworkers are handling calls as quickly as they can, and they're urging people who need assistance to call instead of emailing. If any person or business wants to help out the victims, they can also call that number, or they can send an email to lvarc@usa.redcross.org. Officials say they're getting a ton of calls from people who want to help out. They say they're keeping a list. And be sure to stay with 69 News and WFMZ.com for the very latest on this disaster. Our coverage continues tonight on the news at 10. And don't forget, you can get updates anytime on our website. We also have posted the reports that we've been bringing you all morning and afternoon long. Plus, you can watch raw video from the scene and a slideshow of pictures. It's all at